Hello guys, today, Saturday, July 6, 2024, world famous Little Moose and I are at the home of Jeff Blazey. And as you can see, I brought along my Astro-Physics 175 f8 refractor, serial number 28, which I received on November 1st, 2012, and it saw first light on November 3rd. As always guys, Little Moose hopes you enjoy this video, and later we will take a look at Jeff's observatory at his home. So a little bit of background guys as to why I'm here today. Many years ago Jeff bought an 8-inch f12 D&G refractor, and then just last month he bought my Astro-Physics 1600 mount. I put that up for sale excuse me, as I'm downsizing. And I had my second Mach 2 mount on order that I should get sometime in August. And during our conversation, when we met to give him the mount, he had mentioned how he does these tests, and he knew I had a 175 and said, hey, I'd love to test it. So here we are. All right, guys, so this is Jeff, and he's the one that's going to do the testing and show us how it's done. And Jeff, if you could, please let us know about your Cloudy Nights site and where you put all your tests on.
Yes, as Tony said, my handle on Cloudy Nights is Jeff B. And over the past several years, I've tested several dozen, at least, telescopes, primarily refractors, and primarily in double pass, as you're going to see here today.
Okay, Jeff, could you share with the viewers your experience with Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon in 1969?
Sure, Tony. I was a student of his in my undergraduate work and graduate work at the University of Cincinnati in the mid-1970s. Took several courses from him. My undergraduate work was, courses like aircraft performance, aircraft stability and control, and preliminary design. And senior level courses and graduate level courses were flight test 1 and 2 and flight test instrumentation 1 and 2. And I have to tell you, he was a great professor. He loved teaching, and he was not the type of Neil Armstrong that you saw in certain movies and depictions. For example, the recent movie First Man. He was much more open, much more personable, chatty sometimes, and had a terrific sense of humor.
Okay, Jeff, before we get on to the business at hand today of testing this 175 refractor, could you please let us give the viewers your professional background when you were working?
Sure. My professional background, I had a bachelor's and master's degree in aerospace engineering, and I spent 38 years in the industry working for both the FAA at times and primarily at the General Electric aircraft engines. While working for the FAA and GE, my primary responsibilities were the certification of commercial jet engines that go on the airplanes at Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Airbus, and Lockheed. While I'm working specifically at the FAA, I was also on the team of the very first meetings that were set up between government and industry to explore and come up with regulations for commercial space transportation, just like Elon Musk is doing today. Okay, one of the first things I do when I get a refracting telescope in for testing is I test for the collimation of both the focuser and for the lens assembly itself. The collimation test for the focuser is really very simple. I put a precision laser into the back end of the focuser, and I put a paper mask with this hole right in the middle over the face of the lens. Turn on the laser. If the laser beam fires right through the center of the hole, the focuser is in collimation with the main axis of the lens assembly itself. And you see that here. The laser beam is firing right through the center of the hole, and that bright spot there on the right, that's the reflection of the beam exiting that hole off the big autocollimation flat that we're going to talk about and use later.
And then what did you say that the secondary dot is there to the right of the center?
That's the reflection of the primary beam coming out of the center of the hole of the paper mask. It's the reflection off of the optical flat that we're going to be using later for double pass testing. Okay, this is the precision glider laser that I use to shine through the telescope for the focuser collimation. It has
And-
precision aperture dot in it.
Okay, could you turn that on for us, pointing that towards the camera, that laser?
Sorry?
Can you turn that on so we can see that laser beam and then aim it towards the camera? No, it's not on. Oh, okay. Tip it a little. Okay, I guess
It's very,
very faint. Okay,
oh wait a minute, there we go.
yep. Excellent. All right. All right, thanks.
And then, this is nothing but a simple paper mask made with scissors and a precision compass with a hole in the middle of it that fits right over the top of the aperture of the telescope. Very simple. The next test I do is a collimation of the, check for the collimation of the objective lens itself relative to the focuser. And to do that, I use a Cheshire eyepiece, quote eyepiece, which is a precision tube with a hole drilled through the middle of it and what looks like a 45-degree star diagonal almost in there that reflects light. The light comes in from the side, is reflected towards the objective lens here, and it's reflected, and then there are reflections from the back surfaces of the lens back through this peephole. And I look into the peephole, and what I should hope to see is just one small dot. If the lens was severely cocked to one side, I might see 3 or 4 small reflection dots off the elements, the back elements of the lens. If I see only one dot, that means that all the elements are aligned with each other and are aligned with the center of the focuser.
Okay, Jeff, before we check that alignment, what's that blue tube telescope next to you?
Oh, Tony, I'm glad you asked. This is a 1987-88 vintage Astro-Physics 178 F9 oil triplet. I'm at least the third owner. So this telescope here is approximately, coming up on almost 40 years old. And it's been my workhorse telescope for outreach and my own personal instrument for a long, long time. And I thought it would be interesting as we test the new school scope, we can also test an old school scope from Astro-Physics. That's about 35 years difference in age. Okay, now I'm going to do the Cheshire eyepiece test of the objective. I've inserted it into an 1 1/4" adapter. I put it into the back, visual back of the telescope. I rotate it around a little bit to try to get the maximum illumination that I can of the reflected light into the telescope. And hopefully I will see exactly what I see here now, which is a single reflection dot. That means that all the elements are perfectly lined up with the center hole here of my Cheshire eyepiece. I've never had a telescope from Astro-Physics, some of them are rather old, fail any of those 2 tests. After those collimation tests, the next thing I do is I take my double-pass mirror and I move it as close as I can get it to, physically get it, to the front of the lens cell. Now this mirror is used for double pass testing. This particular mirror is quite precise, but for double pass you don't need a very precise mirror. You don't need a 20th or a 10th of a wave or anything like that. You can get by with actually 2 or 3 waves of deviation as long as it's very smooth and very regular. The reason why we bring the mirror so close to the main front of the tube assembly is to make sure that no air really intrudes in between the gap, because air currents inside of a room, even the heat from your hand or from your breath, can really distort the images that you see in double pass.
The next thing to do is to align the telescope with the optical flat. The way to do that is with a green LED, which you see underneath the blue tape, shining through a 133 line per inch Ronchi screen. The beam from the LED goes through the telescope, bounces off the flat, and comes back and goes through the screen again. The way to make sure they're perfectly aligned is to have the return beam coming from the flat almost on top of or just above the source beam, which is under the blue tape. And you see that here. That's called double pass. It passes through the system twice.
Okay, now that I've got the telescope set up and aligned and it's in green light, I'm going to go ahead and take some pictures of what I see inside the image from the Ronchi screen. So what I do is I've got my camera all set up for speed, ASA, color balance, focus, and all that stuff. So I bring my camera up here close. I see the image, I center it, and I take a picture. I go ahead, center it again. I take multiple pictures, and then I choose the best one I can. Done.
And then, Jeff, you say that you actually find that your camera phone does the best job for this task.
Yes, it does. In fact, I've made extensive comparisons between what I see here in the camera and what I see visually. And honestly, I've talked to several people in particular, one of which is Mike Spooner and I have carried on conversations about that. The camera actually shows more than what I see visually.
So Jeff, beautiful image. Could you please describe that to the viewers, what we're seeing?
What you're seeing is the inside of focus image in double pass through the Ronchi screen. The black lines you see are the shadows of the Ronchi screen lines. What you want to see on a very, very good optic is straight up and down what we call jail bar black lines. And that's exactly what you see here. You also see, as the lines go out towards the edge of the optic, they go straight out to the edge. That means the edge of the optic is excellent.
Thank you for that, Jeff.
This next image you see here is taken outside of focus. And as you can see, you still have jail bar straight lines. Very sharp, very well defined, that are straight all the way out to the edge. Now if you look carefully at the center of the center bar, you see a little bit of a dot. There's a little bitty center zone, which you can see in the next image, which will be the at focus image. Next up was an at focus image, and I can tell you right now that these are the hardest of all the double pass images to take, especially on a highly well-figured telescope like this, because at focus, the image almost blanks out. So I had to do some very careful positioning of the Ronchi screen lines and everything in at focus to bring out as much detail as I possibly get. And you can see in the image here, you do see detail. You see structure on the waveform. What you're looking at is the waveform and the effect of the polish on the waveform. The center dot that I pointed out in the other images, you can readily see. But you also see some circular zoning, some very mild, smooth circular zoning. What you see are smooth transitions between all of them. And it's pretty pretty evenly illuminated except for that shadow going across, which I put there on purpose. What you see in double pass is double reality. I'd say, just on my own guess, I would say that the structures that you see outside the center zone are on the order of a 30th or a 40th of a wavelength. This is really good performance. Okay, what you're seeing is a white light LED image taken inside of focus. I take white light LEDs because I use my camera's software as well, primarily my laptop software and ancient processing software, where I separate out the red, green, and blue colors and display them as individual images and synthesize a yellow image. But as you can see in this image, it's predominantly white. Yeah, up at the very tips and the bottoms of the lines, the shadows, you see a little bit of blue. That tells me that there is a little bit of blue spectrum error. But that's really, really very, very good for such a large, fast triplet. This is the inside of focus. This is the same type of image, but it's the outside of focus. And you can definitely see that there's a little bit of blue error by looking at the shadow lines that are coming into the view from the right and from the left. You definitely see the blue. But when you look at the borders and the edges of the shadows of the three primary lines, you hardly see any fringing at all, except again at the very tips. This again is excellent performance. Now, you notice I didn't do a white light at focus image, and there are several reasons why I didn't. A, that's because primarily because they're very difficult to do. And B, in terms, my at-focus images, what I'm looking for in my at-focus images are smoothness, obvious circular zonings, straight lines out to the edge. And the green light images, since I've isolated just the green light, give me the highest contrast that I can get at focus. So the green light images actually tell me everything I really need to know about what I want, about what I'm looking for at focus, which is smoothness of the figure and a zoning, and at least in green light, spherical correction too. But it tells me everything I need to know. I don't need the white light images. One nice thing about double pass is that it tells me everything I need to know about a lens, pretty much from a spherical aberration point of view. But it can also give me some intelligence about what's going on, if there might be any astigmatism or coma. Both of those, astigmatism and coma, I would rather do in a star test, but I can see it, particularly astigmatism and double pass. When I look at those line shadows as I sweep from one side of focus to the other side of focus, if those line shadows rotate or cock in any one direction as I'm going through one side of focus to the other side of focus, that's an indication that there might be some astigmatism in the setup or in the lens block. And that's another thing I will look specifically for during a star test. So the way it's set up now, we're doing double pass testing straight through the telescope without the use of a diagonal. This way, we're looking at just the lens block performance with nothing else in the light path. But people don't look through these types of telescopes without a star diagonal. So prior to the test, what we also did, we did another double pass test, which we didn't record, but I can tell you the results, where we inserted the diagonal and repeated the test. We saw no differences in the inside of focus images, the outside of focuses, or the at focus images. This means that this particular AP Max Bright star diagonal, along with all the other ones I've ever tested, is excellent. We could not see any aberrations at all associated with the diagonal.
So Jeff's setup is pretty simple. He's He's got his cell phone for the camera. He's got this battery holder with leads on it, alligator clips, that he can use for either attaching to the white LED or the green LED. Here's the grading, 133 lines. And then this, Jeff said he had 3D printed. Very cool. The adapter, you can see the hole that the LED goes in. It's got this pocket for the grading. And your 2-inch adapter back there that goes into the eyepiece holder. Very cool. So as you can see, Jeff, is this rocket science?
No, it's not rocket science, and I know because I am a rocket scientist.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciate your time today. And next, I want to get your opinion on the results today of this Astro-Physics 175 Starfire EDF. All right, Jeff, so after your thorough testing, what is your impression of this scope?
This is a real piece of art. Fit and finish wise, it's classic astrophysics perfection in terms of paint, focus, everything, focuser, everything. It's just a beautiful work of art. Optically, I consider this to be a reference quality optic as far as I can tell from what I've seen so far. There's nothing in it that says nothing other than excellence in the optical quality of the scope. In green light, it shows almost perfect spherical correction. I would say it's at least a good 8th to 10th wave in green light. The figure is smooth. It has some very small negligible zones which have smooth transitions. I consider this to be a reference quality optic.
Excellent, Jeff. Moose and I appreciate your time today, and clear skies.
I want it.
Well, we'll talk. We'll talk, Jeff. So, let's take a look at the blue tube Astro-Physics from 86 or 87 vintage. Now, Jeff, you said that focuser isn't the original, correct?
No, it's not. I went ahead and changed out the focuser. This is a backplate that came from the D&G Optical Company because they use the same type of tubing, 7-inch OD tubing, which fit perfectly. And then, of course, D&G standardized their focusers on the Astro-Physics focuser. So I had an extra 2.7-inch Astro-Physics focuser with the feather touch feature on it, which is plugged right in. And I will say right up front, I went ahead and I shortened the tube on this telescope to make it directly bino friendly with an Astro-Physics diagonal. This is my private at-home observatory. It's 13 foot by 13 foot. The entire roof assembly rolls off onto the set of tracks you see on the left-hand side. It's about 2 years old, and it was put together. It was designed by me, but built by a contractor friend of mine. This is my composite linear roof roll-off extender, better known as a stick. Here's how I do it.
Ah, very cool.
Even an old guy like me can do it. And then I just push it back the other way.
Yeah, very nice.
This is a Lozos 10-inch f9 triplet apochromat, got from APM Marcus Lutz. It's riding on top of a Mathis MI500 mount, which is, by the way, going to be replaced by the AP 1600 mount that I bought from you recently.
Beautiful, really nice.
This is the Rachel A. Hutzel Observatory at Camp Troy. This is where I donated my 11-inch f12 D&G refracting telescope for use by all the campers that come out here to Camp Troy. This is the 11-inch f12 D&G achromatic refractor riding on top of a parallax instrument 250 series observatory series mount. All of that is mounted on top of a 3.5-ton solid granite pedestal that's cladded with marble, decorative marble inlays. And that is resting atop a 6-foot deep plug of concrete to isolate it from the main observatory floor. The granite pedestal with the marble cladding about 11 years ago cost approximately $5,000 to $6,000.